The morning sky over Seoul turned black as massive alien ships blotted out the sun. Ji-won Park pressed his face against the laboratory window, watching the enormous vessels hover above the city like dark clouds made of metal and strange lights. There, everywhere, whispered his colleague Minho Kim, standing beside him. London, New York, Tokyo. The news says they hit every major city at once. Ji-won nodded grimly. He had been working late in the Seoul Engineering Institute when the first reports came in. Earth's military had tried to fight back, sending jets and missiles against the invaders. The weapons simply bounced off invisible barriers around the alien ships, while return fire from the vessels turned entire military bases into smoking craters. 72 hours, Ji-won muttered. That's all it took for them to break us. The building shook as something heavy landed on the roof. Through the corridors, they could hear the sound of boots, not human boots, but something different, clicking and scraping against the floors, like claws on stone. Hide the quantum processor prototype, Minho said quickly, moving toward their workbench. Maybe we can. The laboratory door exploded inward. 3 alien soldiers stepped through the smoking doorway, and Ji-won got his first close look at Earth's new masters. They were tall, nearly 8 feet high, with bodies that seemed to be made of living crystal. Their skin caught the light and threw it back in rainbow patterns. Each creature had 4 arms, moving with perfect coordination like parts of a machine. Behind them came their leader, distinguishable by the golden bands around his arms and the translation device hanging from his neck like a metal collar. Attention, human technicians. The device spoke in perfect Korean, though the alien's mouth moved in completely different patterns. Your species' chaotic innovation threatens galactic stability. All advanced technology will be confiscated. All technical personnel will be processed for relocation. Ji-won felt his blood turn cold. Around the laboratory, his colleagues, some of the smartest engineers in the world, stood frozen in terror. These were people who had designed fusion reactors, built quantum computers, created artificial intelligence systems that could solve problems humans had struggled with for centuries. Processed? Asked Dr. Yoonji Bae, the department head. What does that mean? The alien leader gestured with one of his 4 arms. More soldiers entered, carrying devices that looked like metallic handcuffs, but larger and more complex. Each one hummed with energy that made the air feel thick and heavy. Your kind builds weapons from children's toys, the alien explained calmly. A human child's building blocks become explosive devices. Your cooking utensils become communication equipment. Your gardening tools become weapons of war. This chaotic creativity cannot be permitted. Minho stepped forward bravely. We're scientists, not soldiers. We build things to help people, not hurt them. Yes, the alien agreed. And this makes you more dangerous than any army. A human soldier with a gun can kill dozens. A human engineer with scrap metal can destroy civilizations. The soldiers began moving through the laboratory, grabbing the human scientists one by one. Ji-won watched in horror as they forced the strange shackles onto Minho's wrists. The moment the devices closed, his friend's hands began to shake uncontrollably. What did you do to him? Ji-won demanded. Neural dampening restraints, the alien leader replied matter-of-factly. They disrupt the precise motor control required for technical work. Your mechanics will retain enough function for basic labor, but nothing more sophisticated. Minho held up his hands, staring at them in despair. His fingers, which had once assembled components smaller than rice grains, now trembled like those of a very old man. I can't feel them properly, he whispered. Why? Ji-won asked, as the soldiers approached him. Why not just kill us? Dead humans cannot work, the alien said. You will mine resources, construct buildings, perform manual labor. Your technical knowledge will fade with disuse, and your dangerous creativity will die with you. The galaxy will be safer. The cold metal of the shackles closed around Jiwan's wrists with a soft click. Immediately, a strange tingling sensation ran up his arms. His hands, which had designed spacecraft engines and built robotic systems, suddenly felt like they belonged to someone else. He tried to make a fist and could barely manage to curl his fingers halfway. Around him, dozens of his colleagues were experiencing the same horrifying transformation. Brilliant minds trapped in bodies that could no longer express their genius through their hands. "You will be transported to work facilities throughout the galaxy," the alien leader announced. "Comply with instructions, and you will be fed and sheltered. Resist and face immediate termination." As the soldiers herded them toward the corridor, Jiwan caught Minho's eye. His friend's expression was not one of defeat, but of careful thought. Even with his hands shackled, Minho's mind was still working, still analyzing, still planning. The transport ships waited outside like giant metal beetles. As they were loaded aboard, Jiwan realized something the aliens might have overlooked. They had chained human hands, but human minds remained free. And the most dangerous thing about human engineers was not their ability to build, it was their refusal to accept that any problem could not be solved. The ships lifted off, carrying Earth's greatest minds toward an uncertain future among the stars. The twin suns of Kepler 442b beat down mercilessly on the mining facility as Jiwan dragged another load of ore across the rocky ground. His shackled hands could barely maintain their grip on the heavy cart, and sweat poured down his face despite the protective clothing the aliens had provided. Beside him, Hyunji Lee struggled with her own cart. She had once built robots that could perform surgery with precision measured in micrometers. Now her hands shook so badly she could hardly hold a simple mining tool. Behind them, Chaemin Cho moved slowly, his brilliant mind that had designed fusion reactors trapped in a body that could no longer obey his commands. "Another beautiful day in paradise," Hyunji muttered in Korean as they reached the ore processing station. The alien guards paid no attention to their conversation. They had learned that humans needed to make noise while they worked, like some kind of primitive social bonding ritual. Jiwan glanced around carefully. The crystalline aliens stood at their posts, like living statues, their four arms moving in perfect coordination as they monitored the human workers. They never seemed to tire, never seemed to need rest. But they also never seemed to really watch what the humans were doing, as long as the ore kept moving. "Break time," announced one of the guards through its translation device. The humans shuffled toward a shaded area where bowls of nutritious but tasteless food waited for them. Hyunji sat close to Jiwan, speaking quietly in rapid Korean. "They think we're broken," she whispered, keeping her voice low. "But they only bound our hands. My brain still works perfectly." Temin nodded slightly, his eyes focused on a pile of discarded alien equipment near the waste disposal area. A small power cell lay among the refuse, occasionally sparking with residual energy. "I've been watching that power cell for 3 days," he said softly. "I can see 17 different ways to repurpose it, maybe more." Over the following days, something remarkable began to happen among the human prisoners. Despite their physical limitations, they started to communicate in ways their captors never noticed. During work, they sang old Korean folk songs, but with subtle changes to the lyrics that carried coded messages. When they moved equipment, they tapped on metal pipes in patterns that seemed random but actually spelled out words. Jiwan found himself becoming the center of these quiet conversations. His background in systems engineering made him good at organizing information, even when that information had to be passed through whispered words and hand signals. "Look," said Minji Park during one meal break. She was a former electronics expert who now spent her days sorting rocks. "When I was examining the waste disposal system, I noticed something. The aliens don't understand how we think. They see a broken tool and throw it away. We see spare parts." She gestured toward the growing pile of discarded items near their work area. "There are magnetic components in there, metal alloys, chemical residues. They think it's all garbage because it doesn't work the way it's supposed to work. Temon's eyes lit up despite his exhaustion. But we don't need things to work the way they're supposed to work. We need them to work the way we want them to work. The real breakthrough came from an unexpected source. So Min Kong had been a chemical engineer before the invasion, specializing in industrial processes. Now she was assigned to cleaning duties, which the aliens considered the safest job for humans. After all, what could someone do with soap and water? The cleaning solvents, she whispered to Giwan one evening as they returned to their sleeping quarters. I've been studying them for weeks. They're more complex than they need to be for simple cleaning. She explained that the alien cleaning compounds contained several different chemicals that could be separated and recombined. Working during her cleaning shifts, using the primitive knowledge of chemistry that didn't require precise hand movements, she had managed to create something new. It's not much, she said, showing him what looked like a small, clay-like substance hidden in the sole of her work boot. But it's explosive. Not enough to hurt anyone seriously, but enough to damage equipment. G1 stared at the tiny device. In amazement. It was crude, primitive by the standards of human technology, but it represented something far more important than its explosive power. It proved that human creativity could not be destroyed by shackling their hands. Word of summons. Success spread through the prisoner population, using their network of songs, taps, and whispered conversations. Other specialists began to experiment with their own areas of expertise. Electrical engineers found ways to create simple circuits from metal scraps. Mechanical engineers designed tools that could be operated despite their trembling hands. Computer scientists developed counting systems that could store and process information using nothing but memory and mental calculation. As the weeks passed, Ji-won watched his fellow humans transform from broken prisoners into something the aliens had never expected: a thinking, planning, coordinating resistance force. They made a mistake, he told the growing circle of conspirators during one of their carefully arranged meetings. They see us as broken machines that can still do simple labor, but we're not machines at all. He looked around at the faces of his fellow prisoners, brilliant minds trapped in shackled bodies, but still burning with the fire of human ingenuity. They think human creativity lives in our hands, he continued quietly. Let them keep thinking that while we prove them wrong. Our minds are still free, and that's all we really need. The night shift at the mining facility was always quieter. Fewer guards, dimmer lights, and the constant hum of machinery that never stopped. Jeo-nam had been waiting for this moment for 3 weeks, studying every wire, every connection, every pattern in the power system that kept their prison running. He crouched beside a maintenance panel, his shackled hands barely able to grip the makeshift probe he had constructed from stripped wire and a piece of alien metal he had found in the waste pile. The probe was crude, ugly, but it would do what he needed it to do. Careful, whispered Hunji Lee, who was standing watch nearby. Her job was to warn him if any guards came near. Remember, if they catch us, we're all dead. Ji-ho nodded and carefully inserted his probe into the power junction. His hands shook from the neural dampeners, but he had practiced this movement hundreds of times in his mind. The probe made contact, and immediately sparks flew as electricity arced through the improvised device. The lights went out, not just in their section, but in the entire eastern wing of the facility. Emergency power kicked in a few seconds later, bathing everything in a red glow, but the damage was done. Alien guards rushed around in confusion, their equipment flickering and failing as power surges ran through the electrical system. It worked, Youngji breathed in amazement. You actually did it. But their celebration was short-lived. As they hurried back to their sleeping quarters, Ji-ho felt a strange tingling in his wrists. His shackles were warm, warmer than they had ever been before. The next day, Hyunji found herself alone in a storage room, supposedly organizing cleaning supplies. But she had other things on her mind. The way her shackles had reacted during the power surge the night before had given her an idea. She examined the metal bands around her wrists carefully. They were not simple restraints. They were far more complex than that. Tiny circuits ran through the metal, and she could feel a constant electromagnetic field pulsing against her skin. These are generators, she realized suddenly. Not just restraints, but actual electromagnetic field generators. That evening, she gathered Ji-won, Taemin, and a few other trusted prisoners in a corner of the dining area. Speaking in whispered Korean, she explained her discovery. The shackles create an electromagnetic field that disrupts our nervous system, she said quietly. But electromagnetic fields work both ways. If we can reverse the polarity, overload the system. Taemin's eyes widened with understanding. We could turn them into weapons. Exactly, but it's dangerous, Hunji warned. If we get it wrong, the neural damage could be permanent. We could end up brain dead. The group was quiet for a long moment. They all understood the risk, but they also understood what success could mean over the next several days. Working in complete secrecy, the engineers developed a method to modify their shackles. It required precise timing and a deep understanding of electromagnetic theory, but it was possible. The key was to create a feedback loop in the power system that would cause the devices to overload in a controlled manner. The first volunteer was Dongwoo Yoon, a former electronics specialist who had helped design the modification technique. He chose a moment when he was working near a guard station, carrying ore samples for processing. Remember, Hunji had told him, you'll only have a few seconds before the overload burns out the circuits. Make them count. Dongwoo approached the alien guard post, his heart racing. The crystalline guards barely noticed him. Humans carrying ore samples were as common as dirt in the facility. He stopped near their communication equipment and took a deep breath. Then he triggered the overload. The sensation was like being struck by lightning. Every nerve in his body screamed in pain as the electromagnetic pulse erupted from his shackles. But the effect on the alien equipment was immediate and devastating. Security monitors went black, communication devices started producing nothing but static, and alarm systems began sounding random false alerts. The guards rushed around in confusion, trying to understand why all their equipment had suddenly failed. Dongwoo collapsed to the ground, his shackles now dead and smoking, but he was alive and conscious. More importantly, he was free to move his hands normally for the first time in months. Word of the success spread through their secret communication network like wildfire. Soon, other prisoners began volunteering for similar missions. Each overload could only be done once. The shackles would be destroyed in the process. But the chaos they created was worth far more than the risk. Minji Park overloaded her shackles near the main power grid, causing rolling blackouts throughout the facility. Kung Soo-han triggered his near the communication center, cutting off contact with other alien installations for several hours. Each incident was carefully planned and executed, creating maximum disruption while appearing to be random equipment failures. The aliens began to suspect that something was wrong, but they couldn't figure out what. Their equipment was failing at an alarming rate, but there was no evidence of sabotage. The human prisoners appeared to be just as helpless as ever, still struggling with their basic tasks, still unable to perform complex manual operations. They chained our hands, Taemin observed quietly as they watched another guard struggle with a malfunctioning scanner. So, we learned to fight with our chains. Ji-won smiled grimly. The aliens had made a fundamental error. They had assumed that taking away humanity's tools would make them helpless. Instead, humans had simply learned to turn their prison into their arsenal. The rebellion was no longer just beginning. It was growing stronger every day. Deep beneath the mining facility, in tunnels that the aliens had marked as structurally unstable and forgotten about, something remarkable was taking shape. The passages were dark, cramped, and dangerous. Exactly the kind of place the crystalline guards would never think to search. Gaiwan crawled through the narrow entrance, his shackled hands making the journey difficult. Behind him, Sunwoo Park followed, carrying a bundle of salvaged water pipes and metal scraps wrapped in torn clothing. The former military engineer had been working on something special for weeks. "How much further?" Sunwoo whispered. "Just around this corner," Jiwon replied, squeezing through a gap between fallen rocks. The tunnel opened into a larger chamber that had once been part of the facility's original construction. Now it served as their secret workshop, a hidden space where humanity's brightest minds could work without alien supervision. They called it simply the workshop, though it looked more like a cave filled with junk. But two trained engineers, that junk was treasure. Sunwoo spread his materials on a flat rock that served as their workbench. "The magnetic coils from the broken ore sorters," he explained to Giwan, pointing to several metal rings. "Combined with these water pipes from the maintenance area, I can build something the aliens won't expect." He began assembling what looked like a crude tube with wires wrapped around it. His shackled hands moved slowly, clumsily, but his mind guided every placement with precision. "A railgun?" Jiwan asked, recognizing the design. "Basic electromagnetic projectile launcher," Sunwoo confirmed. "It won't win any engineering prizes, but it can punch a hole through alien armor at 50 meters. Across the chamber, Yunishin was working on her own project. The biochemist had spent her career designing medicines to help people. Now, she was using that same knowledge for a very different purpose. "Food waste from the kitchen," she explained, stirring a mixture in a container. "Made from alien metal scraps, cleaning chemicals from the maintenance supply. Organic compounds that are completely harmless when separate, but when combined in the right proportions. ... She held up a small, clay-like substance, explosive, not very powerful, but enough to disable equipment or create a distraction. Around the chamber, other specialists worked on their own contributions to their growing arsenal. Minji Park had built a communication device from kitchen equipment, an alien technology scraps, a radio that could intercept and decode alien transmissions. Dongwoo Yoon was creating electromagnetic weapons by modifying the power systems from destroyed shackles. Every piece of worthless refuse that the aliens threw away became raw material for human ingenuity. Broken tools became weapon components. Discarded electronics became communication equipment. Even organic waste became explosive compounds. Jiwan moved through the workshop, coordinating the various projects. His background in systems engineering made him good at seeing how different pieces could work together. A communication device here, an explosive charge there, electromagnetic weapons, providing support. It was all part of a larger plan. "The aliens think in terms of authorized technology," he explained to Min Jae-seo, a newcomer who had just been brought into their resistance cell. "They see a broken tool and think it's useless. They see garbage and think it's worthless. They can't conceive of warfare conducted with scraps and creativity." Min Jae looked around the chamber in amazement. "But how do you coordinate all of this? How do you plan attacks without the aliens knowing?" Jiwon pointed to Minji Park, who was hunched over her improvised communication device. "She monitors their transmissions. We know their patrol schedules, their shift changes, their supply deliveries. We use their own information against them." The first major test of their underground arsenal came on a night when the twin suns were both below the horizon, leaving the facility in darkness, except for artificial lighting. The target was the primary communications array, a tall tower that connected the mining facility to the alien fleet in orbit. Sunwoo positioned his railgun in the tunnels beneath the tower. Yuna placed her explosive charges at key structural points. Dongwoo and several other volunteers prepared to overload their shackles simultaneously, creating electromagnetic pulses that would disable the tower's electronic systems. Remember, Giwan told them, through their secret communication network, "We only get one chance. If this fails, they'll know we're organized, and they'll tear this place apart looking for us." At the agreed signal, the attack began. Explosive charges detonated at the base of the communications tower, weakening its support structure. Electromagnetic pulses from overloaded shackles fried the electronic systems, and Sun Wu's railgun fired a metal projectile through the tower's main power coupling, causing a spectacular shower of sparks. The tower collapsed in a heap of twisted metal and broken electronics. In the confusion that followed, teams of human prisoners moved through the facility, using weapons from their underground arsenal to overwhelm surprised guards and free dozens of their fellow captives. What had started as a small group of conspirators was now becoming a real rebellion. Kyung-Soo Han, monitoring alien communications through Minji's improvised radio, brought news that was both good and bad. "They're finally starting to understand. This isn't random equipment failure," he reported. "They know we're organized now. They're calling in military reinforcements from the fleet." Juan smiled grimly. "Good. Let them bring their conventional military thinking. Ships, weapons, tactics, everything they learned in their military academies." He looked around at his fellow humans, brilliant minds working with primitive tools to create weapons that no alien military manual had ever described. They still don't understand what they're really fighting. Dawn broke over Kepler 44 to be with the sound of thunder as hegemony warships descended through the atmosphere. The massive vessels looked like falling stars, their hulls glowing red-hot from atmospheric entry. But instead of panic, Ji-won Park felt only calm determination as he watched from the mining facility's main platform. "Positions, everyone," he called to the gathered human prisoners. Around him, hundreds of his fellow captives held weapons that looked like nothing any military academy had ever taught. Railguns made from water pipes, chemical bombs crafted from kitchen waste, electromagnetic weapons built from their own broken shackles. Hyunji Lee stood beside him, her hands finally free after months of neural dampening. She held a device that looked like a child's toy, but contained enough explosive power to collapse a building. "Are you ready for this?" she asked quietly. Ji-won nodded. "We've been preparing for months. The entire facility is one giant weapon now. Every system, every power line, every piece of salvaged equipment, it's all connected." In the central power station, Yoonji Bae crouched beside the main generator, her hands working carefully on modifications she had made over the past several weeks. The aliens thought she was just a maintenance worker, cleaning and organizing. They never noticed that she was actually rewiring their entire power grid. "This is it," she whispered to herself, making the final connection. "Time to show them what human engineers can really do." The first hegemony landing craft touched down near the facility's main entrance. Crystalline soldiers poured out, their forearms carrying advanced weapons that could cut through steel. They moved in perfect formation, exactly as their military training had taught them. They never saw the attack coming. What appeared to be a massive equipment failure began spreading across the facility. Lights flickered and died. Communication systems started producing nothing but static. Security cameras went blank. But this wasn't random malfunction. It was the culmination of months of careful sabotage. EUNG triggered the cascade from the central power core. The electromagnetic pulse she created didn't just disable the local systems. It spread through the aliens' own communication network like a computer virus, jumping from ship to ship, facility to facility. "Now," Giwan shouted. The human rebellion erupted from every corner of the mining complex. Kim In-cho fired his improvised railgun at the nearest landing craft, the metal projectile punching through its hull like paper. The ship crashed to the ground in a shower of sparks and alien screams. Yuna Shin threw her chemical bombs at a group of advancing soldiers. The crude explosives released clouds of gas that sent the crystalline warriors fleeing in confusion, their advanced sensors overwhelmed by the simple but effective compounds. Everywhere, the sound of neural dampening shackles overloading filled the air. Dozens of human prisoners had volunteered to destroy their restraints simultaneously, creating an electromagnetic storm that interfered with every piece of alien technology in the area. The hegemony soldiers found themselves fighting an enemy they couldn't understand. Their advanced weapons failed to function properly. Their communication devices produced only noise. Their sensors showed conflicting and impossible readings. Meanwhile, the humans' primitive weapons worked perfectly. The railguns fired metal slugs with devastating accuracy. The chemical weapons created chaos and confusion. The electromagnetic pulses disabled every electronic system the aliens tried to use. Sunwoo Park led a team armed with improvised explosives through the facility's lower levels, targeting the landing zone where more alien reinforcements were trying to deploy. Remember, he called to his team, we're not trying to match their technology, we're making their technology work against them. His words proved true, as another electromagnetic pulse caused a hegemony transport ship to crash into its own landing pad, the cascade effect spreading to other vessels nearby. From orbit, the alien fleet tried to provide support, but their weapons couldn't fire without risking their own troops on the ground. Worse, the electromagnetic virus that Yunji had created was spreading through their network, causing system failures throughout the fleet. The battle raged for hours, but gradually the alien forces found themselves retreating. Every time they tried to establish a position, human ingenuity found a way to undermine it. Every piece of advanced technology they deployed somehow turned against them. Finally, as the twin suns reached their zenith, a single hegemony shuttle approached the facility under a white flag. The alien commander who emerged was tall, even by their species standards, his crystalline body marked with the golden bands of high rank. I wish to speak with your leader, he announced through his translation device. Ji-won stepped forward, still holding the improvised weapon he had been using. I'm as close to a leader as you'll find. We don't really do hierarchy the way you do. The alien commander studied him for a long moment. We underestimated your species, he admitted. We sought to limit your dangerous creativity, but we succeeded only in making it more creative and more dangerous. Around them, other human prisoners were emerging from their hiding places, their faces dirty but triumphant. Many still wore the broken remains of their neural dampening shackles, now transformed into badges of victory. We're not your enemies, Ji-won said calmly. We never were. You made us your enemies when you decided that human creativity was too dangerous to be allowed to exist. The alien nodded slowly. Perhaps we should have tried a different approach. Next time, Ji-won smiled. Try asking nicely. Humans respond much better to cooperation than suppression. As the hegemony ships departed, carrying their hard-learned lesson back to the stars, Ji-won looked around at his fellow humans. They had proven something important, that humanity's greatest weapon was not their technology, but their refusal to accept that any problem was impossible to solve.